Yeah, I don't know. To me, influencer marketing seems kind of like a waste of time. It seems expensive. Like, convince me why we should be doing it.
Well, first, explain what an influencer is. Let me talk about that. So, influencers kind of become like a gross word.
Right.
Like I feel like even influencers, who people who consider influencers, think it's a kind of a gross word. But it's synonymous with content creator, right? Somebody that has a following online that creates content. That's what an influencer is. It can be really beneficial, and I think a lot of the time people can waste money paying influencers
Totally.
that have zero impact at anything at all. But it can be extremely beneficial, especially for small businesses that are targeting a specific demographic, right? So obviously, an influencer creates content. They can create several different pieces of content, styles of content. One would be UGC. UGC content is user generated content. User generated content would be very natural content. So I'm using this thing in a normal way that you would see it on my page. So let's take me, for example. When I was doing Mole in the Maker and I was doing projects all the time and filming them, a good UGC would be a tool. So I can use a tool in a project. If I'm building a deck, I'd have a miter saw. I'd want to show off the miter saw for a specific company. I would use it in my video. Does that make sense?
Hmm.
That's UGC, right? I'm using it in a normal everyday setting for my page. And everybody's page is different. If you're a baker, you're doing it in the kitchen, right? And you're using some sort of tool, like let's say it's a scale and you're using a food scale, something simple like that. That's UGC content. The other one would be more like professional content. So
Right.
you're getting like ad style content that's quick and punchy. You can do more of like a comedy type thing which obviously is one of the most probably liked things about social media is that you find something funny and you send it to your friends. So that's a really good way to use influencers. And the last would be to get professional photos or videos, right? And so those are the kind of the three different ways that I would use or look for when it comes to analyzing influencers' content. So let's say you have a product. Let's take shoes, for example, right? We use shoes a lot in our
Yeah. Yeah. It's
examples,
kind of
but they're easy.
a good go to.
Let's say it's an athletic shoe. It's a trail running shoe. So it's even more specific, right? We wouldn't just do anybody that's big, right? Like we want to target people that are in the trail running community. So we're going to look up hashtags of trail runners. We're going to look up trendy things like hiking, trail running. We're going to look up different things and try to find content we like. And then from there, we can reach out via social media. We could do it through email, depending on what kind of. I think honestly, just messaging them on the platforms, it makes it a little less serious and more conversational. Influencers can be beneficial in four different ways, right? First, I think is just creating content. Like if you're a restaurant owner, you don't have time make content and video yourself when you have employees and they're trying to make empanadas. That's not a thing. You don't have this extra time to be like, I'm gonna video this, edit it, make sure, and you're doing trying.
Well,
It's just
and
not
it
gonna
might not
happen.
even be that good, even if they did have the time.
Right. So being able to outsource that to an influencer that enjoys content creation and when you look at their page creates good content, it's a great way to kind of bypass that, right? And get
Right.
stuff that you can have on your page that people can see that will want them to come to your restaurant, or
Yeah.
store or whatever it is. The second would be they already have a trusted, engaged audience, right? So this is for influencers that are slightly bigger, right? And even if they're not huge, let's say several thousand followers, they can have a really engaged following. And that's really beneficial because that means the people that follow them trust what they say. So if you're trying to build a trust of a business or brand, getting people to vouch for you is a really good way to do that.
Hmm.
And so if you can target somebody that's in your demographic and the people that follow them are also in your demographic, you've now just opened up the pool of people who may see you. The visibility is now increased across for your brand, right?
We actually have a client that we run ads for, and I've talked to their other guy that kind of runs their influencer marketing program, and he's talked a lot about some of these big influencers. and when they promote their product through these big influencers, it hardly does anything at
Yeah.
all. But they've had way more success with more of the mid to smaller
Micro
micro
influencers.
influencers,
Yeah.
that they get way more revenue based off that, and they're cheaper too to
Yeah.
work with.
They're a lot cheaper. And a lot of the micro influencers, like when I first started, right? I was like maybe 2,000 to 5,000 followers. Any company that wanted to send me tools, I was all for. I was like, yeah, dude, send them my way. I'll take content for you. I was just excited that somebody thought my stuff was good enough that they wanted to send me free product. And I thought that was awesome.
It's a huge compliment.
Yeah, you feel really good about it. And I was like, you know what? Let's just send them in. And then as you get to a certain point, you're like, okay, like I'm going to be choosy on who I do stuff for, because I don't want a really crappy tool brand to send me a tool and then me essentially promote it. So, right. So then you start to be a little more picky. And then it gets to the point where you're like, I need to get paid for this because I have a good following. I'm getting a ton of views. It's going to move the needle for you. And it takes time. And so for me to take time out of my day to focus on a specific product, you need to make sure I get paid. Right. And so the micro influencers can be a lot cheaper. A lot of time to do it for just a product for content exchange, which is obviously the cheapest. So if you have a product that costs you to manufacture like $4 and you can send that to them, and even let's say you sell for 20, so you're sending them a $20 product, but for you only costs $4. If they do one post or tag you in stories, you just paid $4 essentially to get, to get a story and get visibility. That's cheap.
And even in the advertising world, like pay-per-click advertising, that's very, very cheap.
Right.
If it generates revenue.
Right. And so it's a good way to start getting a product out there if you're a startup, or if you have, you don't have a lot of cash flow to pay content creators.
I had a question.
Sure.
So like, how much of the content out there do you think people are getting paid to make? Like, even when, like, did anyone ever reach out to you and be like, hey, we just want you to use our product. You don't even have to talk about it. We just want it in the shot. Like, were there any instances like that? Or is there always, like, whenever, you can tell when people are being paid to sponsor a product, right?
Right.
Because they start going off on this kind of like sales pitch and stuff. But I'm just kind of interested to know, like, how much the content out there, when someone talks about a product, what's the likelihood that they're getting paid to promote it?
Percentage wise, that's hard to say. I would get people to. I got a bunch of content or a product from people that just would send me stuff. Like they would just say, "Hey, we want you to use this," and it's like, okay.
Like no strings attached.
I would not sign anything, and if it was a crappy product, I just wouldn't post about it. Be like, that was trash. And then just like throw it away or just not use it or whatever. Then there's other times that they would just send it and it was an amazing tool or amazing product, and I was all for posting about it because I'm like, I don't care if they didn't pay me because this thing's awesome. I want other people to know about it. And then there's times where it was kind of like a middle of the road product, but I was getting paid for it, so I posted about it. Right? It's kind of a mixed bag. It just depends on. I think going through the influencers, and if you're going to pay an influencer to make sure that their brand value, their value of their brand also matches the value of your brand is very important. And looking at the engaged followers, looking at kind of the interactions they're having, whether it's them responding to people, it's a good thing to pay attention to, because you don't want to get misaligned with an influencer that doesn't represent your brand very well.
Right.
That makes sense. So, and that doesn't mean they have to agree with everything that you believe, but it also, you don't want to basically promote a product to someone that's not going to interact with the demographic you're trying to target to sell products with. You don't want that. So be a little picky on that. I think overall, getting content from influencers, getting some brand awareness, and getting some engagement from loyal people, it can be very beneficial. So content creation and influencer marketing is still very much alive, and I think it will be for a very long time. So it's something that every business should consider diving into.
Sweet. We can end there. I do want to do a quick portion that we could always cut to, whenever we want in the segment. But I just kind of want to test this out and see how it feels like. So I can be like, so now we're into the what now portion of the episode. What
Well,
should
no, so just say that. So
Yeah.
just don't even say that. Just say, so I kind of said it on the first one we did, where
Yeah.
it was like, okay, so as a business owner, like, what would you do with this information? I think that's kind of, so it'd be like, so you could be like, okay, so I'm a small business owner. What now? What do I do with this info? And then
Okay.
I could go from there.
So as a small business owner, what now? What do we do next?
Well, I think start looking for targeted influencer or targeted content creators that will hit the demographic you're looking for. So if you're an e-commerce site that sells trail running shoes, look for somebody that's going to fit that bill, right? Look for somebody that's going to give you content that is worth posting and worth having on your page. And also, depending on what your budget is, start looking at who you can get for that, because you're going to have to talk to several different people, and you're going to have to, but I like to cast a wide net also, because you'll be surprised. There'll be some that are huge that you're like, this person costs a ton. And then you send them a message and they'll tell you like, yeah, I'll do it for $250. You're like, really?
All
That's
right.
it? That's crazy. Okay. And then there's other people that are a lot smaller that have like 4,000 followers, and they're like, yeah, I'll do it for 5,000. And you're like, no, that's not, so cast a wide net. Start reaching out to content creators, start looking into the social media platforms, and look at it at not necessarily your interests, but what your business interests would be, right? Because I think a lot of business owners, because I've seen this, they have their business account, but then they follow just stuff that they like. And it's like, well, we should probably follow what your business would like, not necessarily what you like.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Totally.
And so start diving into that to define who's big in the space, or who just does good content in the space that you can partner with. And start to message them, start to connect with these people. If you're willing to just send out content without any strings attached, that's really good for huge accounts, big accounts, because they might respond, they might not, but that's just part of the game. But yeah, start reaching out to accounts and casting a wide net when it comes to creators. Thanks for listening, guys. Make sure you hit that like and subscribe button. Leave a comment below on if you agreed with today's topic, disagreed with today's topic. Let's start a discussion to figure out the best practices to grow your small business.
Please visit us at launchingpros.com, where you can find more information on how to grow your business as an entrepreneur.